Hello everyone, this is the webinar Understanding New 2024 GMDSS Regulations and How to Remain SOLAS Compliant from our sponsors Communication and Internet Provider Cobham Satcom. We're joined today by guest speaker Niels Peter Agdal, SOLAS expert and Radiocommunications Product Manager at Cobham Satcom. Questions will be answered after his presentation, so please leave them in the Q&A section. Our founding editor, Carl Jeffrey from Digital Ship, will now explain more.
So our topic today is changes in the GMDSS regulations. So that's the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System. The changes came into force on January the 1st, 2024, as part of a new version of the International Maritime Organization's Safety at Life at Sea, or SOLAS regulations. You probably know that GMDSS is a system ships use to send out a message to nearby coastal stations if they get into distress. And a big change is that you're allowed more choice in your communication systems. So for most deep water, which comes under Sea Area A3 in GMDSS, companies used to install 2 Inmarsat C terminals and a VHF radio, and now they may want to have an Iridium terminal instead of one of the Inmarsat Cs. There's other changes that we'll go into. The good news is that no equipment is becoming redundant under the grandfather rules. So if you're managing communications or safety on a 20-year-old bulk carrier with an old printer or radio on board, you can still use whatever you have. So if you're responsible for GMDSS systems at a shipping company in the IT, communications, or the safety department, you probably want to keep up to date with the changes. We're going to hear today from Niels Peter Agdal, SOLAS expert and radio communications product manager at Cobham Satcom, joining us today from Copenhagen. He's been working in maritime communications since 1997. Cobham Satcom is one of the world's largest maritime Satcom equipment providers. Niels Peter is going to explain the basics of GMDSS, the different rules for different sea areas, the equipment you need and the options you have and what has changed. We're going to have a presentation from Niels Peter of about 30 minutes, then we'll take your questions. You can put the questions in the Q&A box at any time. And I'd like to invite Niels Peter to start the talk.
Thank you very much. Let's just get this on. Okay, is this going through nicely?
Yes, that's fine, yeah.
So, yes, thank you for the introduction, Carl. I think this presentation will be of course, an understanding of GMDSS and also where we are coming from. And also we will learn, I will explain more about what the new options are going into the future, which actually is already on because it was now implemented by January 1st, 2024. And not all options are in fact available yet, but it is now options which is possible. So there's always the issue of one thing is the regulation in place, the other thing is that the equipment should be also in place in order to fulfill these regulations. So this is what this session will address. Just a short introduction to me and to Cobham Satcom. You may know us from all our satellite products, from the CTEL products, but specifically also for the Sailor product. And Sailor products are the place where we originate from all the radio products which we have had over the years. We have been in the radio safety and tracking, as we call it, for many years now, and we continue to be there so that we can deliver what we call full GMDSS packages. So our business is in fact to make sure that we have the equipment available for radio safety and tracking GMDSS on board ship. So that is our business, and that's why we always make sure that we are in compliance to new rules and new regulations, and also see the new opportunities for products going forward. So this presentation here will start almost at the basics. I thought that it would be a good way to put this into perspective so that we know why we have all this equipment and where it all comes from, and an understanding on where we need different equipment. So bear with me if some of you may know this already, but I will just put this in perspective, as I said, to to start with. And that is really perspective, because this is more than 110 years ago. We were having a disaster at sea in the Atlantic Ocean. We had a ship, Titanic, which hit an iceberg. And at the time, there were not really any regulations of any kind at sea to handle these things. It was almost up to the ship itself to understand this, and they would put a random number of lifeboats, they would put other kinds of equipment on board, but no regulations were handling this. And that also resulted, of course, in that no one really listened when the Titanic cried for help, and they may have seen some distress flares. They would see that there were they thought they were having a party over there. There were not enough lifeboats. All these things, this disaster brought to light that there was not really any rules for this. So already back then, safety of life at sea, this is what we know as SOLAS, started to emerge. Fast forwarding, as I said, 110 years, today this is a huge apparatus. This is a huge thing. We are now talking United Nations. We are talking IMO, which defines all the conventions which we have to run by. We have what we call Maritime Safety Committee. If you look at the right on this chart here, Maritime Safety Committee would then implement resolutions, which is a little bit more detailed, and then we would have all the test standards made for us. And that's actually for us as a manufacturer of equipment, that we have to make equipment which is capable of passing the test standards and also complying to the convention and resolution. So that is our job, to make sure that our equipment is always in compliance. So whenever there is a new installment of a new product for GMDSS purpose, this is in compliance to the current rules and regulations. Even after we have all these products made for the test standards, we even have to have individual type approvals, and that can seem a little bit funny, that as it is the same convention, resolutions, and test standards which they all have to test by, but different countries or regions want their own type approvals. So we would have European Union have their own type approvals. We would have China. We would have Brazil, we would have US, and these kind of things have their own approvals of all this equipment, so that whenever there's a surveyor coming on board later, they can see that this product, in fact, is in compliance to all these rules and regulations. So that's the big job for us, to make sure that whenever you buy a SOLAS or a Sailor GMDSS product, it is in compliance to current rules, and that is what you can rely on. The SOLAS book is, in fact, much more than just radio. As you can see, there's of course radio, and there's also other kinds of areas, fire protection, the number of lifeboats, and all these things is defined in the SOLAS book. But what we are talking about here is the section called radio communication. And what does that say? We have a term called GMDSS, Global Maritime Distress and Safety System. That is where we find what is the mandatory requirements for ships, communication, and alarming. And this is defined by where the ship is sailing. So it's not like all places on the globe have to have the same equipment. It's actually defined according to where it is sailing. And how do we do that? Because the GMDSS states that any ship must always, and I mean always, no matter where it is, have to be able to contact a coastal station. So no matter where the ship is sailing, we must be able to get in touch with a coastal station. And then there's the second part, that no ship must sink actually without it automatically transmitting a distress alarm. Bearing in mind that we are now talking about SOLAS ship, and that is above 300 gross tonnage. So that's why these are the commercial ships mainly, but also ferries and also the big yachts and these things. But this is the statements which we need to comply to. How do we contact a coastal station no matter where we are? And how do we make sure that if there is an incident and we are not able to press the red button, which is also a part of all this, and all this equipment, it will automatically, by itself, start transmitting a distress alarm. And for that, I have to talk just a second about technology, because we all know that the globe is round. So there are some limitations to how we can communicate around the globe. And we can, very simplistic, we can look at this in these three ways here. We have what we would call line of sight, meaning a direct line between the transmitter and the receiver. So there is a direct, they can see each other. We know this from the VHF is the line of sight. And with that frequency we have down below here. So that is a line of sight, meaning that actually depending on how high the antenna is and both the receiver and the transmitter, then distance can be enhanced a little bit, but not very far. The same principle is what we use for satellite communication. We would have a direct line, or we can see, you could call it, see the satellite in the sky, and then we would send and receive, and we can reflect in the satellite also with a direct line. That's how it works, so a straight line of communication. We do have other options, and that's where we were before we would introduce the satellite communication. We would have the MF frequencies, and they had the ability sort of to curve along the globe, so we would enhance the distance a little bit. And then we would have the HF, which then would have the ability to bounce, you could call it, bounce in the atmosphere up and down, and then by that we can enhance the distance of communication. Not very quality-wise high communication, but at the time this was the only thing we had. So this is what we have to work with when we talk about being able to reach a coastal station no matter where we are. Up until January 1st, 2024, we were relying only on the Inmarsat C network. And that is, as you know, a geostationary satellite, meaning that this is a fixed position above 36,000 kilometers above the Earth, and there will be 3 or 4 satellites, and then they have the full coverage of the globe. But also, as you can see on the drawing on the right, geostationary satellites have a limitation in coverage. It cannot reach the polar regions, both north and south. So it will be covering within 60, 70 degrees plus north and south, and that is its coverage area for a SAT-C. So that is why we are dividing the globe into sea areas. Now we know, you can say, we know that the VHF has limitation in distance. We know that then we can go MF, and we know we have SAT-C, and then we have the outside of SAT-C. And that is what we then work by, because the sea area A1 is defined as the coverage or being able to reach a coastal station through a VHF. So that is the definition of sea area A1, reaching the coastal station through a VHF. And we have the same thing for sea area A2. Now it's just how we can reach, and it will be by an MF solution, we can reach the coastal station. And then we go out to the longer distance. We are relying on the SAT-C, and that is where we find the sea area A3 up until January 1st. Sea area A4, then, as remember, we were outside of the coverage area of a geostationary satellite. So that's why we in this sea area would have to rely on HF to be the means of communication and how we would reach a coastal station. Coastal stations in itself is a topic which we have to address, because now this is the part of the world where I am right now. Denmark. And then we will see that there's a lot of coastal stations of VHF and even MF A2. And these are quite they're covering basically the whole area. But if we go other places, there can be in Africa, it can be in South America, there's no coastal stations, either VHF or MF. So in that case, when we are sailing in this area, we would just off the beach go directly into sea area A3. So that is, in fact, something to remember. Most of the SOLAS ships in this size, which we're talking about here, of course, will have the need to go across oceans. So they would always have to have at least sea area A3 in their equipment list. But there can be other areas where they only need, for instance, ferries, they can only need sea area A1. But it is important, and now I'm building up, you could say, to the decision making of what equipment do we need. And as you can see here, we have to make decisions. Where is this ship going to sail? And what is the availability of also coastal stations, so that we would know that we would have the right equipment in the area where we want to sail. So if you look at it from a product point of view, you would find that now this is a chart which we are working by, that if you have an installation of sea area A3, which is by far the common one, and now I'm talking about as before January 1st, 2024, but you will notice that there's always two. So if you look at the sea area A3, which is a dual Inmarsat C, there's two Inmarsat Cs, there's two VHF and so on. So this is because for safety reasons, we always have to have redundant products. So we would have more than one. We would have more than one VHF, because if one breaks, there's always the other one to handle the situation. So there's always two, and that's important. It's not only that the individual product has to comply, it also have to be duplicated so that there is two pieces of the same equipment in a certain area. So this, in our term, from sailor products, is actually where we find all our products. So you can see the portable VHFs, the normal standard VHF, MF, and so on. And you'll also notice at the bottom there is the EPIRB, and the EPIRB is in fact the device which is doing the automatic transmission of a distress without, so no ship can sink without it automatically transmitting a distress. So you may know the EPIRB, it has a release. It has a release where it comes down on below 5 meters, it will release, and then it will start transmitting a distress. So that is the EPIRB, and that is handling the part 2 of the GMDSS. That's why we have this. But portable radios we have to bring into the life raft. We would have an AIS or a SAT also to bring into the life raft so that we can be found if we are in a life raft. So all this equipment is GMDSS, and that is the full GMDSS package as we know it. So when we do products, we find all these products. We want to have, per definition, full GMDSS product range. That is our mission, that we have all these equipment. And we also make sure that all this equipment is in fact approved and according to the standards which we know. So we will find the wheel mark, as you can see on the left, that is the European Union approvals, and we will find CCS, China. We did also have Russian. Now we will not have the Russian anymore for other reasons, but then there will be others, Korean, Brazilian, and so on. So we would have different approvals for the same products. Because at the end of the day, this is of course a matter of safety. We want to make sure that we have a means of communication in case of an emergency. But once a year, there will be a surveying of this. So any ship will have a surveyor coming on board, and they will look at the products, and they will have a test of the products. They will look at the approvals and so on, making sure that these products are okay according to GMDSS, and they will issue a surveyor report. So that is part of this, is to, in order to be allowed to sail, this has to be in order. And once a year, it's the surveyor coming on board, but actually every time any ship is at any port, the port authorities have the opportunity to go on board, and they can in fact do the same, and they can even, in the worst possible case, they can ground a ship if that really is that bad. So this is important to have this up and running in order to make sure that the ship is in fact capable of handling an emergency at sea. So a full GMDSS package could look like this. This is our GMDSS package. We have the mini C antennas on each side. We would have the screen for those two mini Cs, and then we would have the VHF. There would be another VHF on the conning position, for instance, and then we would have an MFHF system as well. So that is, as you know, how a GMDSS console could look like, also going forward. But now it's where I come to the next part of this, because when we had the January 1st, eventually the implementation of the new regulations were in place, and now we have some other options which I think is important that we all understand. It's not a revolution at all of GMDSS. You don't have to be, to me, any scared of this of any kind, because it's actually more a question of new opportunities, which has now been added to the current situation. In principle, the sea area A1 and A2 are the same. But now, instead of in sea area A3, in the original SOLAS book, it would say sea area A3 is defined by the coverage area of an Inmarsat sea. That was the definition of sea area A3. Now it is the coverage area of the recognized mobile satellite service which we have available. And that is the big difference, because now we can use other satellite operators for GMDSS. And at the moment, it is on top of Inmarsat, which is of course still there, that it is also Iridium, which is an opportunity to use as GMDSS. Having, of course, the right equipment, having the right approvals, and all these things, but then there is an option for an alternative satellite part of the GMDSS. So it is, if we're using the Inmarsat, we will use pretty much the same setup as we know today, because then we would have the same limitations of the geostationary satellites. So there will still be the need to cover by other means the sea area A4, and that is still the HF, which is the opportunity to do that. So that is the same. I will come back to that. We are running by the mini C, as it is called today, from Inmarsat. There will be also new opportunities for that going forward. And on top of that, we would have Iridium as an opportunity for GMDSS. And as you notice on the picture on the right, you would see that, of course, Iridium is lower orbit satellite system, and we would have full coverage because these satellites are moving, and they will be also covering the polar regions, both north and south. So in that case, you could see that there's no need for having, or you can say the satellite coverage is also in A4. Not that many ships are actually sailing in the A4, but in reality, the Iridium gives the opportunity also to cover in sea area A4 as we knew it before. So what we will see is that now there's a lot of new opportunities, actually, because we saw before we had let's say an A3 installation with two mini Cs. Now you would have the opportunity to mix, still understanding that there has to be two. So if you really want the sea area A4 coverage, you would need 2 iridium of some kind, but there can be different setups. One larger iridium, one smaller iridium. It can be also mini C going forward, and there will also be the successor of mini C coming up, which is another part of the Inmarsat offering, and that is also where we, as in Iridium, will also introduce the voice communication on the GMDSS terminal for Inmarsat. That is also part of the future. But now, when a ship is going to define what equipment do I need, there is more considerations to be made. You could go with what you know, and you can also try to mix it a little bit with other equipment. So I think bearing in mind that any GMDSS equipment installation is always something which will be there for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. So this is something which we expect to be there for that long. So who knows where a ship is going to sail in the future, but so these considerations have to be made so that an installation upon, I don't know, from a shipyard or refurbishment has to be taking care of where we expect this ship to go also in the future. But a lot of new opportunities and a lot of new other possibilities to use equipment, because up until now we have had the mini C basically handling the GMDSS features. Now we can also see that this GMDSS antenna will be able to do other things. And as I said, for instance, the voice part, and that can also be limited data usage also through an antenna like this. We haven't seen them yet, but there may be also in the future someone who wanted to apply for a regional approval. You could argue that maybe a Mediterranean satellite could have a GMDSS solution for that limited area, and that is also possible. But it requires, of course, that they apply to the IMO, and they can get the approval with the rules which the satellite setup also need, and then they can also get a regional approval, and then that will require hardware to be made and approved, as we have talked about earlier. So that is also an option. We haven't seen them yet. It may come, but at the moment we are still talking about global coverage, and when I say global coverage, it's of course this is also with the limitations of geostationary satellites. So in the future, which is now, we would see a setup like this. So we will still have the sea area A1, where we talk about reaching the coastal station with the VHF. We will still have an MF need for sea area A2. And then it will, in sea area A3, which if it's within Inmarsat coverage, and if it's not Inmarsat, actually sea area A3 and A4 will merge, so that we would have a common one. If it's Inmarsat, then we will have the need for HF communication also in sea area A4. So looking at the same chart which we had before, this is a picture which can be used. Now this is with an Inmarsat solution, and then we can see in the future there will be a sea area dash A3 dash A4 would be the same if it is an Iridium installation. This column here, number 3. So that can also cover sea area A3 if it is Iridium, or sea area A4 if it is Iridium. So I think the main thing for everybody is to understand that we have to, I think, make a little bit more considerations into what equipment do we need earlier on. So make the wise decision, and also ask and talk to the experts on this to say, okay, this ship here, what do I really need for that ship? Where is it going? What do I need? and by that decide what equipment I will have on board. So it's a little bit more decision making, and I think the consultancy of us in the industry can help. But there's a decision to be made going forward. As I said, this is equipment which is going to be on board for a long time. So this decision, I think, have to be made carefully so that we understand what equipment is on this particular ship for wherever it is going to sail. So in the future, we may have a console like this. I think we will also see a different type of console, because I think that the screens which we see now here, the 10-inch screens which we are using for our mini Cs today, will probably change. So that I think the console will be smaller in size, so that will be a little bit different. We will also see that there is a need for you can just a small trigger here is you look at the very old printers we have here, because those printers are needle printers, very old printers, which we have had now for many years, and these are the ones which are approved. There will be another way of doing this. So, for instance, on the mini C or the Iridium terminals, we can store messages instead of printing them. So that will be a future of no printer, where there's a printer today. So we can sort of take the printers out of an installation going forward. So that was a 31-minute crash course in GMDSS. I hope you got something out of this. So as I said, this is important that we all understand, and we are a little bit on the forefront of this, especially for new builds, that we understand that whenever we fit a new ship, we have to look ahead and have to make these decisions. What equipment for GMDSS do I want for this ship? And then we can supply it. Carl.
Well, that's great. Okay, so if you'd like to stop sharing, and we'll go to the questions. So we've got four questions, and I've got some of my own as well. So there's two questions pretty similar, so perhaps we'll start with those. So Anu Sivaprasad is with Consilium in United Arab Emirates. Mikhail Rikan is a consultant in Netherlands, I think. So we're asking about this. You need 2 satellites and a radio, which I think you had it on your slide, which I was a bit confused about. So Anu is saying, do you need separate MF or MF and HF equipment if you've got 1 Sat C? And Mikhail is asking, if you've got 2 Iridiums, do you still need radio?
Yes, so the VHF you will always need. And I think what is maybe causing the confusion here, let's say that you in the future would have 2 Iridiums, where you would cover also the sea area A3 and A4. But then you would still have to have the coverage for sea area A2. And in our portfolio, we have combined the MF and the HF into one. I think we will see in the future MF only installations which will come up, because that will be enough, that there will be an MF only, and that will be to cover for the sea area A2. So we just, all the years we've been making, we made an MF HF, so we have the full range of frequencies within the same product. But you are right. If you have an Iridium, you would not need HF necessarily.
You've got to have VHS for talking to when you're very near to the coast. Yeah,
exactly. So you can use, if you have to comply to all sea areas when you are sailing, and then you have to have MF available to cover for the sea area A2.
Okay, and then so that's Mikhail's question. So Anu's question: if you've only got 1 satellite C, can you have a separate? Right, you've got to have 2 satellites for A3 anyway, I think, don't you? Is that?
Yeah. And you can say even in the current, and then that's where it may get a little bit tricky, because you could say that if, let's say, you combine a mini C from Inmarsat, which has the geostationary coverage, and then you combine that with an Iridium, then you only have 1 covering for the polar regions. Then maybe you need the HF to have the duplication in the polar regions, but you can duplicate within A3 an Iridium with a mini C. So long as you are within so you can say that the shortest coverage area, the smallest coverage area, then you're fine also having iridium for that area. So you can have both in that case, yes.
Okay, so then Mikhail Rikan's first question, I mean, he's asking, does iridium make it simpler? I mean, we've got to be scrupulously careful not to show any bias towards one system or another here, don't we? So we can't say.
That's fine.
I mean, it's for the viewer to decide if it's simpler if you use iridium rather than having two Inmarsats, I suppose. That's not
No, but
for
you
us
can
to say.
the part of usability is you can say we in our portfolio we have introduced the touch screens, and we have sort of the man-machine interfaces is made in that way, and others have done it differently. But the main thing is, of course, that both Iridium and Inmarsat solutions here have to comply to rules and regulations. So they have to do the same thing, actually. So they just have to. They're just doing it differently with different satellite systems. But in reality, the functionality of the product will be the same. How the interface or the working with the equipment, that can vary, yes. But then they can, of course, can like or dislike. I don't know how it works, but it will be touch screens and these kind of things, I'm sure, also from us and also from others who want to make specifically Iridium, actually.
Okay, so next on the list, Kuzru Sanjana. Can you see the questions, Pete Niels? Because this is quite a complicated one.
I cannot. Let's see.
This is right at the top of the list. I don't actually understand it myself. What it was. A lot of letters in the question.
I cannot really see. How
you open the Q&A box and scroll to the top there.
Q&A box.
Perhaps we'll pass on this one.
I cannot.
Oh, it's going to. So Per Christensen from Faruno in Denmark is asking about fleet broadband. That's probably an easier one to answer.
Yes. Fleet broadband was originally intended also to be part of GMDSS. It is now being put on hold. Let's see what the future will bring, so that we could also have an application, GMDSS application, running on fleet broadband. At the moment, this is not possible. It may be in the future that there will be the fleet broadband GMDSS solution as well, and it is kind of similar also to what we see on the Iridium, where we have it now maybe an opportunity to combine GMDSS safety solutions with also a little bit of data solution. So that will be the question here. But at the moment, fleet broadband is not an option for GMDSS due to the satellite constellations and how they work together and so on. So it's not available at the moment.
Okay, so Martin van Ugelen from Alphatron in the Netherlands. Will the setup of medium MF radio change into a more simple construction? So no ATU, I don't know what that is anymore, but a pre-adjusted antenna or simple inside the transmitter?
Yeah, you're right. That I think, if, as I said, the construction which we have is a construction of a control unit. We would have a transceiver unit, and then we would have an antenna tuner. If it were only MF, it could be a little bit more simple solution, and then by that it could also be a cheaper solution, actually. But as for now, we have investigated also a little bit, and we have not decided to make a simple, straight MF solution. But that is something which we have in our kind of thought list of maybe doing in the future, so that we can eliminate the HF, and by that making it simpler or cheaper also for installation.
Okay, so now we've got a question from Mauritius, which is the first time I've ever seen that in our conference. So Yanish Supersadsing. So in the light of the outcomes of World Radio Conference 23, how did new regulations address the integration of Earth stations in motion technology on maritime vessels, and what specific licensing requirements must be met to ensure compliance with these standards? You're a radio expert, so I guess you know what that means. Do you?
Not really. I think that question I have to maybe follow up on, because there may be something which we have to address a little bit more in detail. Also answering the one in Mauritius here. So I'll be happy to also to give feedback if maybe they will ask the question directly. Also to me is okay. It'll be fine.
Okay, so next we've got Bernard Heinemann. I think he's with BSH, or someone from BSH with that name. He's asking about Starlink.
Yes.
Can we use that in a
No,
A3?
you
No,
can
you
say
can't.
at the moment not. Again, one of the things of GMDSS is that you have to have redundancy also in the network, so you have fallback solutions and these kind of things. So the network itself have to be also compliant to how this is supposed to work. And as far as I know, Starlink has not applied for any of this. So at the moment, there's no indications that Starlink of any kind will go into GMDSS. This is purely an Inmarsat Iridium at the moment thing, not the Starlink network.
Okay. Maybe I'll try again with Khusru Sanjana's question. So instead of one MFHF with 6 channels of digital selective calling and 2 Satcom DSS, can we have 2 MFHF SSB? I don't know what those with 6-channel digital selective calling and 1 Satcom GMDSS. Will that be okay for A3 compliance? That's a very complicated question, but I expect you know the answer.
You can say the HF in itself could also be used as GMDSS. So that can be in fact happen. We haven't seen many of those. We will also prefer that the part of A3 is handled, A3, A4 is handled through a satellite system. I think that is much better because of the limitations of HF. But there can be areas where we can combine different products a little bit differently. We are not quite seen how that will be addressed also by the authorities. But I think it can happen that there will be also even a non-satellite solution, which I guess the question also is here. But we haven't seen that, and I would also recommend that we continue to have a satellite solution for sea area A3 and A4.
Oh, okay. So Steve Thomas with NSSL in the UK. If a vessel currently has MFHF telex and 1 Inmarsat C to meet current requirements, I understand existing installations can remain, but if they're replacing MFHF following damage, do you then need 2 MF and a second Sat C?
Yes, that's the funny thing, because the grandfather rule, it has a little bit of gray area. You could say if it is a service installation, oftentimes it is okay to continue with the same setup as you had before. But if it's a fully new installation of whatever equipment, the new installation have to follow the new rules and regulations. But the gray zone of this is that there can be a VHF breaking down, which was originally maybe from 10 years ago, and there's whatever button and so something has broken, and then it will be replaced. That is still within the grandfather rule. So there's a little bit of gray area there, how to handle service switch of products. But any new installation or replacement of full units, the new one have to comply to new regulations.
Wow. So going back to Mauritius again, I don't know if we might be better to take this one after the webinar offline, but he's asking about a ship station license to cover the operation of eSIM. I just asked Google what eSIM is and couldn't find out. Or will operators need to obtain additional or specific licenses? Is that an easy question to answer? Do you want to do that one?
No, you can say, for instance, that is for the satellite part. If you have eSIMs or you have SIM cards, the solutions which are available, I think in the future we will see much more eSIMs. But for sure, both the Iridium and also the Inmarsat will require a subscription. And that is related either to eSIM or something else. But the subscription is needed for all these satellite products.
Okay, so Anders Bertelsen, who's with the Polaris in Denmark.
Yeah, no, Anders. Hi, Anders.
Oh, I guess you need 2 MFHS with D6T. Don't know what D6T is for A4, even with Iridium. So you need, I think you do need HF with Iridium in A4. I don't know what D6T is.
No, no, me neither, actually. But I think I think we need to talk to Anders, because either if you, let's say you have 2 Iridiums for A4, to me that will be enough. But maybe there's something which is I have missed here. So I would like to learn. But to me that is enough for an installation. but that's just me.
Okay, so Akhil Kumar, who's a master in India field service engineer, is asking about certification. So we've got the field radio survey. That's what it's called, the radio survey.
Radio survey, yes.
And there's no competency certificates we need, or is there?
No, you can say the equipment is certified, and what we try to do is to make sure that we have certified all the equipment according to different flag states, if it's the European and so on. A lot of the flags will accept, for instance, let's say there is a European approval, they will say, okay, this is fine. Others will require their own. And that is, you can say, the daily business of us to a certain extent, is to make sure that we have all these certificates. When it comes to the person on board, I think the whole certification of a seaman or on board is that they are okay to run the ship, and then that is the certification they need in order to be allowed to be a captain or so on.
Okay, so Jeremy Nunez from Tronav in a country DO. We're asking again, so it's a MF as a duplication in the A3 area. So you've got one in Marsat C and MFHF as the backup. Is that?
That could happen, yes.
Okay.
So you have to have the MSI, but that is also a solution which we will see. I think it's more a question of it could work for sure. It could. So we just have to see what the authorities say about that. I think the straightforward solution will be dual satellite systems.
Okay, so Constantine Benedict in Romania, a company called Mares SRL. So he's asking, why aren't we talking about the other companies, Starlink, OneWeb, and Kuiper? Do you have to be approved by IMO to be GMDSS, and they're not approved? That's the answer? They're not.
You have to be approved. Sorry.
Well, no, is the answer that we can't use Starlink because it's not approved by?
No, exactly. So it isn't. Yeah. And you can say it's not just the network. So even if you have an Iridium antenna and you use that for data, or fleet broadband, you use that for data, it is not a GMDSS unit. You would have to have a complete setup with the antenna. You have to have the GMDSS application running, and these two together gives us the GMDSS solution. So it's not just the network say, fine, now I have an Iridium, then I'm all fine. You have to have the equipment capable of handling GMDSS on that specific network, and that equipment has to be approved according to the rules as I explained.
Okay, so now we're going to Hong Kong. Gary Tambo is with a Hostmos Engineering Technical Department. So the vessel, A3 vessel has MFHF radio and one SAT-C. So do they need to install another equipment to conform with new regulation? I think the answer is no.
No, you can say it is. I think that's important to understand that it's not like these new requirements are mandating every ship to look at the installation and have new equipment because whatever is now obsolete. That has never been the idea of GMDSS. So the grandfather rule is still in place, and once it's new equipment, then new rules apply, and that's how it works. So we still see, as you may know, a lot of the old green radios on board ships, which is now maybe 20 years old, but they are still okay because they were in compliance at the time of installation.
Wow. So getting a little bit off the topic, Katja Reinkovsky of Navtor in Germany saying vessels get weather and safety information over Inmarsat C. Is Iridium also offering these services? Feel free to say no if you want to answer that one.
I don't know actually how they are doing that. I don't think so, but I don't know.
Okay, so Walter Fenger, key account manager in Denmark. In future, do you expect MFHF will be replaced by just MF combined with Inmarsat C and Iridium?
I could see that, yes. I could see that happen for sure. That if we have a full global coverage of the A4 area with the Iridium, I could see individual MF solutions coming up. For sure, I could see that. Because then you would have a solution for the A2 area, and you would have the satellite solution both for A3 and A4.
Wow. So Theodoros Rhodis, who's a superintendent electronic engineer with Laskaridis in Greece, So we've got a vessel with one Inmarsat C, one MFHF, and radio telex. Do we have to do anything with that?
Not to my no, I don't think so. As I said, this is working and it is approved, so it's fine. The telex is as you know now being withdrawn as an option for new installations, but we still have the opportunity to use it as long as we can.
Okay, so it's now saying Greece, Dimitris Perdikaris with Pluto Felix Corporation, the CSO. So we've got a dual installation Inmarsat C and Iridium. Do we need dual long-range identification and tracking connections? That's a different subject now, isn't it?
No, that's a different story. I know we actually do have an AIS within our portfolio, but in this respect, AIS is a navigation product. So in this respect, the AIS is not, as far as I know, part of the duplication issue. You have to have an AIS Class A, yes, but not necessarily two.
Okay, so Michael Heckley's question, I think it might take a bit too long to read this one out. Perhaps we only got 10 minutes left. Perhaps although he's got 4 up, but you can't see the questions yet.
No, I can't.
Perhaps I'll try. So A3 vessels sailing before the 1st of January
I can actually.
Okay, with a MFHF, DSC and telex and duplication with Inmarsat C from 1st of January. We're not using telex anymore, except for HF. So the Inmarsat C becomes the primary with duplication by the MFHF. Now primary equipment doesn't contain DSC. Certain class societies allow the duplicated set to also cover the primary equipment requirements, but not all. Not all flag states. What is Cobham's understanding? I guess you'd probably rather leave this one to the flag states, would you, rather than speak on their behalf?
Because we will see individual interpretations of these things, I'm sure. And this is where we have to find our way for this. At some point in time, I assume that this will be sort of leveled out so that they all have the same interpretations, but there will in the beginning here be, and that is specifically on the telex and the MSI and these things. So not a definite answer I have on this one, I'm sure.
Okay, so Joshua Alex, who's a Transocean Marine radio surveyor, can you clarify the need of radio telex on area A3? There aren't many radio telex shore stations.
No, there are not, and for that reason, you can say one thing is compliance, and that's one thing. What to me is the actual operation and the actual feature, and if you look at that, I would say do not use the telex going forward, and use the satellite part. That would be my suggestion, and then just switch it simply.
Okay, Stefan Grohr is with Anschutz, system manager in Germany. According to ComSAR Circular 32, revision 2 of 3rd of July 2023, Navtex is not part of GMDSS. Is there a misunderstanding there?
No, there is not. I think the Navtex as itself will be also a product which will continue. There will be the information coming through other places than the actual specific Navtex. So it is right. Let's see how that also will work. But the Navtex will continue for a while, and then we'll see how it goes. So the information will still be available.
Okay, I think you won't want to answer this question, but I'll give you an opportunity. So Peter Forhoy, old friend of mine, so technical manager of CTech at V Group now, is saying there's been delivery problems with communication equipment for all suppliers in the past few years. Will this improve? I feel free to.
Well, I can do that because that is totally right. We have had that. I must say, from our side, for sure, we have recovered very much so indeed. But you can say in the post-Corona time, there were issues of components and all these things, which I think were hurting us all. But I think we have recovered quite nicely, and I have a feeling actually that other vendors in the business are also recovering pretty well on this. But there were a few years there where it was difficult. That is for sure.
Okay, so Abdul Adam from McKay Marine in the Netherlands asking about the printer requirements.
Yeah. So what we are expecting to do, and today our Mini C does require a printer, as you saw, the needle printer. We are going to release an approval shortly when we have this approved, where we can have a printerless mini-C, so that we can store and retrieve information from the display instead of having printers. So there will be changes to this, and that is more in relation to actually that the printer itself is a very old technology. All of us, I think, in the business are using the same Oki printer inside. It looks different, but inside is pretty much the same. And Oki is no longer wanting to produce this anymore. So we have found this other solution that we would actually make a printerless setup for a mini-C, and that will come out very shortly.
Okay, so three to go. You're doing very well. So Horta Mack with a Formula S Verlag captain in Germany. Why can't we use Inmarsat C or Iridium in A2? Why do we still need MF at all?
You could say that. It is true. It will cover, of course it will. It will also cover A1 actually, but that's just how it's defined. That is the definition is you can reach the coastal station through MF. That's definition of A2, and that is written within the books. And you are right. You could reach a coastal station in A2 area also through a mini-C, of course. So that will always work. Yes.
Okay, so Richard Lee has given a company update on Navtex to Navdat.
No, we don't have that at the moment in our portfolio, but it may be one of the things which we need to look into.
Okay, and Constantine Benedict in Romania, Benedict's probably. So GMDSS certifications required for onboard personnel. Is there any change there?
Not to my knowledge. I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone there, but to me, it's a question of that the people on board are of course certified to run the ship and also to run the safety equipment on board. So it's not like when spying a new mini-C, you have to have a runner's operation certificate or something. It has never been like that, and there's no indications for that either going forward.
Wow, well, that's it. That's the end of the question list. You've answered 32 questions. And that's amazing. You must be absolutely exhausted. I hope you've got a nice, easy rest of the day. And
yeah.
Thank you very much to the audience. I think that's been pretty much the biggest webinar we've ever done. We had 200 people online all at once at one point. I don't think we've ever had an audience that big, and enormous interest in the subject and enormous interest in hearing your expertise, of course. And thank you very much. And I shall pass.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I shall pass back for the closing words. Cheers.
Thank you.
Many thanks to our speaker, Niels Peter Agdal. Join us this Thursday for our next webinar with Opsilog, which you can register from our recent chat message or through our website. Goodbye, and thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.